We checking out the first Descent by Force Gaming.
All right, man, what a week. What a week it's been. Look, on paper, the first Descendant should very much be a game that I love.
That's how I felt.
It is a looter shooter with a variety of PvE. You got horde mode missions, dungeons, and boss battles, just to name a few. We're grinding for gear. We got cool characters to customize via this mod system. We got the shared open world spaces with other people running around. I mean, this checks a lot of boxes for me, and it's very similar to games that I've sunk a load of time into.
I feel like the first Descendant, even though it's checking a bunch of boxes, it's doing just that, checking boxes, not actually making sure that the boxes are like satisfactory or any fun to do.
Ones like Warframe, Destiny, and Division, but also I've enjoyed some of the less popular games people think are bad, like Defiance, Firefall, and Outriders. And I
actually liked Outriders for like the first 2-3 weeks it was out. Definitely not something I see myself going back to, but I dumped like a good 100 hours in that game.
I was hoping really that the first Descendant would be another one of those games just to add to my list. But after playing a bunch between the pre-release beta test and now for a few days post-launch, I gotta say, it's just not hitting the mark. I don't love it. I don't hate it either. Well, I do hate parts of it.
That's how I feel. I don't love it. I don't hate it. Is it atrocious? No. Is it good? Yeah. It's kind of like, it's like drinking tepid water. It quenches your thirst, but it just feels wrong.
Which we'll get to, but I also think it does a few things quite well, and that's why I'm not surprised there are a lot of people enjoying this game. For starters, like, the gameplay generally feels really good. This notoriously can be difficult for third-person shooters. They tend to lack that sense of impact compared to a lot of first-person shooting games. It's not perfect, no, but I would say that shooting and using abilities is pretty snappy and fairly well done. In fact, I think the highest praise that I would give this game, the best thing that it does, is in fact the gameplay feeling good, and that's a big deal. And on a
the worst thing this game does so far is definitely the goddamn melee attack. That melee attack feels like a feather hitting a brick wall. And I'm playing as like the tank dude that you get for free in the beginning. I haven't gotten that far in the game, to be completely honest, but like I could definitely say the melee does not feel good. However, on the other hand, the traversal mechanics feel fantastic.
Similar note, I think the movement is well done too. At a baseline, every single class has the ability to sprint, double jump, mantle terrain, and then use a grappling hook. The big thing with this game though is the fact that it accounts for and carries over momentum. So when you're using your grapple hook, like, you can really fly around the environment. Starting from a sprint, you can jump and then hook onto like any part of the terrain or objects. And then while you're flying towards your target, you've got this horizontal control that lets you slightly move left or right. This allows you to basically launch yourself around the side of your target, carrying that momentum with you, and then you follow that up with a second grapple hook some distance away. I mean, you can really just be flying all over the place. It's just a lot of fun to use, especially...
I mean, I could definitely say that purely because of the grapple hook, I will be dumping in quite a bit more hours in the game just because the movement is a lot of fun.
When that is coupled with a Descendant
kind of like
already has built-in mobility, like any leaps or any move speed enhancement, it can just be a whole heck of a lot of fun sprinting and swinging around. Another thing that I've enjoyed is the class design. Like, yes, there are some pretty generic characters, like you got the basic shooter dude bro, you got the turret guy, you got the one dude who tosses out grenades, you got Elsa, but then there's characters like Bunny. Now, she's been getting a lot of attention for reasons other than her playstyle, but genuinely, I think she's like one of the coolest design classes that I've played in a looter shooter. I'm being serious here. The class is built around the concept of charging up this electric meter and then using it to deal massive area of effect damage. So as you run, you store up this built electricity, and then your various abilities will deal increased damage based on your charge level. So this includes things like lightning emission, which will pulsate AoE damage for every 7 meters you move, or thrill bomb, where you can get an extra burst of AoE damage on call. And then on top of that, after landing from a double jump, you also deal additional AoE damage. And then you couple those mechanics with the speed of light ability, which increases your run speed 50%. And the faster you run, the quicker you build up electricity, and then the more frequently you're pulsating those every 7 meter AoE explosions. It's just crazy, dude. You can also couple this with the grapple hook, and for every 7 meters you move while grappling, you will also pulsate additional damage. The end result, like playing this character when all the pieces come together, is you're running around constantly at 150% move speed, then grapple hooking all over the place to get additional bursts of AoE damage every 7 meters you ever move, and then pulsating additional AoE damage on top of that, all while double jumping, because whenever you land, you do more AoE damage, and it's just crazy. Like, it's a real lot of fun, interesting class design. Then we've got the...
You know, I can definitely say that one thing the first Descendant does right is that even though it's not like the best game I've played or the most unique game that I've played, it feels like it's trying to be different in a world where everyone is trying to be safe. And I feel like they took a bunch of creative liberties that weren't necessarily going to pay off. But the fact that it feels different enough, I think more people are going to stick to this game because we're kind of tired of replaying the same games over and over and over again, but with just a different coat of paint on them. And the first Descendant is doing quite a good job at making it at least look and feel distinct to the common player.
Boss fights that are known as void intercept battles. These I have found varied and interesting. Outside of the fact that every one of them take place in this like single digital arena, I actually thought overall these boss encounters are really good. Interesting mechanics with multiple phases. Even the first couple of boss fights, because you unlock them as you level up. The first few ones can be quite challenging, and it just gets even harder from there. They look cool, they're well animated, and some of them, especially later on, actually really require coordination and effort with your group. I also like the world and environments. It kind of reminds me a bit of Anthem or Skyforge, if you ever played that heap. Another bad game that I enjoyed.
I did play Skyforge, and I really like the concept of Skyforge. It's just that they never really got the performance down. I mean, I played it on PS4. I don't know what it's like on PC, but I feel like on PS4, Skyforge, unfortunately, the performance was never good, and I just had to stop playing after a while. But I really enjoyed like the concept of turning into a god and all that stuff. It was cool.
Lots of cool looking like ancient structures and ruins. They got this sci-fi twist all throughout, and they're in these varied settings and locations. You've got like mountainous regions with the European inspired architecture, deserts with lots of craggy rocks and metallic industrial buildings, foggy forests that remind me a lot of like the Pacific Northwest area of the US. I mean, all around, it's a cool play space. There's cool structures, a cool setting, maybe a tad generic feeling at times, but overall I enjoyed moving around this world. Top of that too, I think the graphics are pretty solid. Like the launch update, I think it looks good. The game ran really well for me. And then just finally, like I do like the general structure of the game, right? So you got those shared open world spaces. I've always been a fan of this, running around, fighting enemies, doing quests, and then just having random people show up and all of a sudden you're working together to complete this one objective.
I have to agree with that. It's like I've played quite a few gacha games or like pay to win games in the past couple of months. I always like try to stop playing the game when I have to start paying. And all of these games require me to be online at all times. However, like, even though I'm online, I never see any people unless I go like into a specific room or into a specific challenge where it allows you to have a co-op, or if you're doing it against another player. The first Descendant, as soon as you enter like the open world area, there's another 3 people in that area as well, and it just allows you to drop in or drop out of missions. You don't need to know them, you don't need to ask. If someone's on a mission, you can just jump in like immediately. And on top of that, for the story missions, I have never waited more than 10 seconds to be in the game. Like IQ, it says it's an average wait time of 12 seconds, and I'd say about 7 seconds later, I'm in the game with a full squad of people, and I have had 0 latency issues whatsoever. So I know the game is getting a lot of flack here and there, but I'm actually having a good time.
It's a lot of fun. You go around the world from one quest marker to another, you then clear the zone, and then at the end, you basically get what is a dungeon run. You finish that, you move on to the next zone, and that's the progress through this game, interwoven with some story. On top of that, you can do void intercept battles in between. They're actually required as you progress, as well as things like special operation missions for grinding resources and materials. And then you're also working on your character. You're equipping new weapons when they come up. You're playing with your mods, tinkering your build via that system, enhancing it through other means. And hey,
one thing I have to say about the mods and the items, you get so much of it early in the game, and so much of it is useless because you're always leveling up and you're always getting a higher leveled weapon, so your inventory is always freaking full. So I'm constantly in a menu managing my inventory when I should be out shooting stuff. I'll be like in a mission, right, being shot out by a bunch of people, and all of a sudden I see inventory full, next room, inventory full. It's like either give me a bigger inventory or make the drops more meaningful, because I don't need a bunch of useless drops constantly throughout my game. You know what I'm saying?
If you like grindy loot games, this is a grindy loot game. There's a lot of different things to grind, especially those 1 to 3% drop chance items you need to unlock certain descendants and weapons, but that's another story which we will get to here in a second. But yeah, as I said, there's plenty I think this game does well. I should enjoy the first Descendant. This video should be, dude, I'm hyped. This game's awesome. I love it. But I don't. And there's a few reasons why. For starters, many of the issues that I had back in early beta test have persisted through launch. And I'm not just gonna complain here, I will provide feedback as we move throughout as well. So there's some smaller things. Like for one, there's just a lot of rough edges around this game. Things like animation.
Bro, enemies, you will like, you'll throw like a mini tactical nuke on an enemy, and he'll just like fall over. Just oh my, just like straight up bang, headshot, and he's like, ow. Like, come on, man. Like, nothing screams this is a video game and breaks immersion than you tossing your ultimate ability and then seeing the enemy barely even stagger while their entire health bar gets depleted in a fraction of a second, and it looks like they've been pushed over by a strong breeze. I mean, come on. Where's my physics here? Okay, give me some ragdoll physics. There's explosions, there's AoEs, there's abilities to send people flying, and yet everything doesn't feel impactful at all.
And sound effects, even like the ambient noise, none of this struck me as particularly good. I think this stuff, yeah, it's just a little rough. Also the dialogue, I mean, this is just flat out bad. Like, it's not, the VL, the dialogue is not good. Also pretty sure it's not synced up with mouth movement unless I was having a stroke the
It is not synced up with mouth movement, I can confirm this.
entire time I was playing this game. Also, the game feels kind of stiff across the board. It's a little harder to pin this one down. I can't really find the exact words, but I would just say something about the way like the characters and enemies move, NPC animations. There's like a lack of natural feel.
Did you see? Look at this. Look at this.
NPC animations. There's like a lack of
time.
natural feel. Really find the exact words, but I would just say something about the way
The red
like
guy.
the characters and enemies move, NPC
Look at that.
animations. There's like
A ice shard blast, and the guy just tipped over. You couldn't add an effect that pushes him back or something?
a lack of natural feel to it all. Just not fluid enough, maybe just not enough to those animations, not enough keyframes. Is that a word for it? I don't know, but is any of this game breaking? No, not really, but again, it is what I would call rough around the edge.
It is immersion breaking, because like when you want to go from skill to attack to jump to grappling hook and then back into an attack, there's almost like it's not an input delay, but when you look at it visually speaking, it kind of feels like an input delay. It's like your descendant has to reset himself to do the animation instead of having his jump animation fluidly transition into like his ground pound animation. I don't know if you guys understand what I'm saying.
Edges. Simple fix here, just continue polishing the game, work on this stuff, improve it as time goes on with patches. Easy, right? The biggest hangups for me though, I don't know if they're going to address these, but maybe we'll see. Okay, so the open world, it still feels lifeless. This was the case in the beta. People told me it was addressed and they fixed it. I've not really seen that in the past 3 days while playing. Fact is, if you or someone in the instance of the zone that you're in hasn't started a quest, there's just absolutely nothing happening in these open zones. There's nothing going on. You're not seeing roaming packs of NPCs, not even static groups taking hold in locations. There's no dynamic events occurring, no puzzles to solve. There's no wildlife running around, those little flourishes that really add to a game feeling alive and full. Literally nothing is happening on these maps. It's all just flat, dead landscape. And I don't mean flat like technically flat. I just mean like it's like flatlined. It just feels dead unless someone has started a quest.
They 100% have to add in world events in the first Descendant if they want to make it go like the long haul, because the missions are super repetitive and they take about like 2 minutes to complete, and then you have a couple of harder missions that you can do. It takes about 9 to 10 minutes to complete, maybe 20 minutes depending on the difficulty and depending on your gear. We need some kind of world event where we can just jump in, help a squad out, jump at, go to your mission, because right now the mission variety is severely lacking. And I think the best short-term solution to that is to at least add some world events, while they can then work on making more missions, increasing the mission variety.
The world only populates with objectives, with enemies, with events if you, or like I said, another player in your instance, if someone starts a mission at those static markers, that then will spawn in specific enemies and objectives for a mission. Whereas, for example, take a look at Destiny. This game gets compared to that a lot. Whenever you go into a zone in Destiny, the entire zone is full of activity from the start. Things are happening. NPCs are holding up locations. There are packs roaming around. You got public events constantly going off. And then if a player starts the mission equivalent in Destiny, if a player starts a patrol in Destiny, that then adds another layer on top of what already feels like a vibrant lived-in world. Recommendation for the first Descendant: populate the world, fill it with stuff beyond what happens when someone begins a mission. Also, I would say visually, I thought the play space in the world feels a bit sparse, and specifically I'm talking about the amount and the density of things in the environment, things like foliage and trees and buildings. It just all feels a little light, and also the scaling's a little weird. It kind of makes the game feel a little dated, despite the fact that it does graphically look pretty good. Recommendation here, fill the play space so it feels less like a diorama and more like a living video game world that we're moving through. My second major problem with the game right now,
Agreed. Please fill it up, because it does feel like a diorama.
has been the quest design is just straight up boring. I'm really specific.
What did I say? The quest design is repetitive, boring, and at best, tedious.
Specifically honing in on the pacing here. So as you play through the game, like I mentioned, you're moving through zones, going from one quest marker to another. You complete them all, you do a little dungeon, and then you move on to the next zone. Maybe you got to go back to town, but that's the general flow. Every quest you do, no matter the zone that you're in, it's all like the same four things. They're either saying kill things, defend a location, collect stuff and bring it back, or capture a location, static or moving. Every single quest in the game, in every single zone, boils down to these four things. Now,
mind you, this is the questing while you're playing like in a zone, right? Because you do have story quests, and it's worse than this, because they'll make you talk to like 4 or 5 NPCs before allowing you to go to the quest zone. It'll be like, oh, hello, Descendant, go talk to the scientist, and they'll help you for the next quest. And then you go see the scientist, and the scientist is like, oh, before you can go on your quest, go see the merchant. So blah, 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 blah. And then you go see the merchant, and then the merchant is like, did you go talk to the artist first? And it's like, this wouldn't bother me if it was just happening in the tutorial because they want to show you who the vendors are. That I understand. But even once you're past the tutorial, you still have go talk to this person, to go talk to this person, and then go stand in this area while tickling your left elbow before you can start the next mission. That's unnecessary padding, which stops me from getting to the game, which is what I want to play. So could we, like, get in advance on that, move along with that? Because that's definitely one of the things that really aggravates me about the first Descendant is all of this busy work you have me doing, talking to these random NPCs.
Now, this is pretty standard stuff, right? This isn't unique to the first Descendant. Most MMOs, most looter shooters, quests boil down to those 4 basic things. My biggest issue is the pacing is very, very bad. It's too slow. While you're playing, for starters, everything dies incredibly fast as you're going through that initial progression. This changes as you move into the harder modes, as you play higher level, like the horde mode missions. Things aren't dying very quickly, but as you're going through the zones, there's just so much downtime. You're killing things instantly, and there's so much downtime between respawns, between timers counting down, between things moving. The result of which, frankly, was just unengaging and a lot of time just standing around feeling pretty bored because there wasn't anything to do. We were just waiting for a timer to tick down. A group of enemies would show up. We would one-shot them like in less than 5 seconds, and then we would be standing there waiting another 20 or 30 seconds for respawns. So my recommendation here would be to up the pacing of enemy spawns. I think that would go a long way. You don't even have to make like enemies way harder while you were leveling up. I understand like leveling is face roll in a lot of games, right? That's part of the process. The hard part doesn't come to end game. If you want to keep a face roll, fine, but like increase the density of monsters or the frequency of spawns or something, so that we're just spending less time just like standing there, just staring around in space. Like, it just really made it unengaging. And along those same lines, the boss design everywhere outside of those void intercept battles, which I think are good, the boss design everywhere else is really bad. I'd like it to introduce you to the first Descendants boss design philosophy. We call it the 3 orbs philosophy.
Bro, the 3 orbs. I can't stand this mechanic. Basically, and he's probably gonna explain it, but basically the boss has a shield and you can't do any damage to the boss until you destroy these 3 orbs that are above them, which gives them the shield. Sure, not a big deal. However, when you destroy one of the orbs, the orbs probably have more HP than the boss. It's insane how much HP these orbs have. And you have to destroy all 3 of them before the shield comes undone. However, as soon as you destroy the orb, there's like a timer before it respawns. And if you guys aren't coordinated enough, you're never going to be able to destroy all 3 orbs at the same time. Because it's about like a 30-second, maybe 45 seconds before the orb respawns. I was fighting this boss with a bunch of randoms. The boss should have taken us about 3, 4, 5 minutes max. It took us nearly 10 minutes because the orbs kept respawning faster than we could destroy the other orbs. Finally, we all kind of understood what we were doing, and then we all kind of teamed up and were able to get there. But at that point, the boss fight was no longer fun. It felt tedious, and you don't want your games to feel tedious.
Philosophy. Take any boss, doesn't matter what its faction is, how it looks, what sort of weapons or skill it has, take that boss, break its health bar into 3 to 4 sections, and then make them invulnerable every time players break through one of those sections until they destroy the 3 floating orbs, either destroy them outright or destroy them in a particular order or destroy them all at the same time. 3 orbs, invulnerable boss, kill those orbs, done. 90% encounters in a game. Like I couldn't believe it. After like my 100th boss of seeing this exact mechanic, I was like, you gotta be kidding me. Just make the 3 orbs. That was their design philosophy.
Also, this is a personal pet peeve of mine. I hate it in games when the boss just becomes invulnerable. Like, why are you purposefully slowing the pace of the combat? If me and my team have a kind of build that allows us to burst the boss and get rid of him in like under a minute, let me do that. Stop like forcing me to have these extended boss fights by giving a bunch of invulnerable phases. Anyways, end of my rant.
To be outside the void intercept battles, because those are really, really cool. My next big thing, and this is a real sticking point here, is that just so blatantly obvious, and this is the case in a lot of grind games, but it feels especially so here. Progression is just clearly artificially stretched out to try to push us towards the cash shop. There's no doubt here with the things like the 24-hour build timers. Gee, I would like to skip those. Oh, I can buy doing that. Great. Or the fact that you've got those a lot of those enhancement materials that you really need for progression, the activators and exchangers and more. Or you got the 1 to 3% drop rates when trying to farm the materials needed for this stuff, which can take players, I don't know, I've seen people saying like upwards of 100 or so hours. I don't have a lot of feedback for this part of the thing, this artificial inflation of progression pushing you towards the monetization. Don't really have feedback here because, let's be honest, this is all done on purpose. This is the repetitive nature of especially free-to-play games, especially free-to-play MMO lights or MMOs. Games are made worse to sell you the solution, right? You've heard that time and time again, that is absolutely the case here. And that leads me to the final thing that I want to talk about. Monetization. Now, I'm not going to run through all of the numbers. Plenty of people have already done that. Let me just put it this way. It's like they took inspiration from Warframe. You hear people saying, it's just like Warframe, it's just like Warframe. No. It's like they took the inspiration from Warframe in terms of how they're monetizing the different aspects of the customization progression. Like, yes, there are a lot of similarities, direct parallels you can draw between Warframe and the first Descendant. But it's like they said, okay, we'll take that baseline. How can we make this worse while simultaneously making more money? That right there pretty much covers exactly how they've monetized this game.
And Warframe's monetization, like, it wasn't that bad, but like the waiting times was insane. And I was like, as an 18-year-old trying to play the game as fast as possible, you can imagine I wasn't very patient, which is why I stopped playing the game. Then eventually I got back to it because it's actually a pretty good game. So for them to take the Warframe monetization tactic with the time and like, oh, you have to wait 3 hours or you have to wait 4 real human days before you can play your character, and then on top of that add even more egregious monetization practices really is just insane to me.
Game. Here's some examples, right? Buying Descendants requires you purchasing 2 bundles of premium currency because the Descendants cost slightly more than what a single bundle of premium currency gives you. This is a tried and true anti-consumer premium currency conversion tactic. You sell bundles that reward barely less than what it is you know people are gonna want to buy. It's scummy, it's always scummy, it's scummy here as well. Or you got the armor dyes that are single use. Like at least in Warframe, when you purchase a color palette, you can use it as much as you like, whenever, however many frames you're trying to customize, whatever parts of it you want to customize. But in this game, you buy 1 dye, you customize 1 part, the dye is gone. You lost it. The paint can ran out just like that. Then there's just the fact that aspects of the grind itself put even Warframe to shame, at least for certain things. And I think the big one that a lot of people you've seen pointing out is the fact that ultimate characters require you to farm missions with 3% drop reward chances for the part that you want in order for you to even be able to make that ultimate character. If you're not familiar with Warframe or the First Descendant, both games have versions of the characters, the playable classes that are just like, there's the base version and then the ultimate version, which is just a better iteration of that, right? So people want the ultimate one because it's the base one, but just better, flat out. If you're trying to farm that for free, you're looking at repeating missions over and over again with as low as a 3% drop rate. That's very low, let me just tell you, that's very low. Or there's the doubling your mod capacity, and this is one of the biggest sources of power in both games, in Warframe and in the First Descendant. However, in First Descendant, the equivalent of the Warframe version, it's 20 times more expensive. Real world money only, by the way, for doing this. That's the only way you can double your mod capacity.
So like the thing with Warframe, there was at least a lot of free options, and I mean the drop rate wasn't fantastic, but the required amount of materials was a lot, but they gave you a lot of options. Like there was this kind of like miner that you could buy, or you could actually craft them as well for free, and then that mining robot would then go to the planet and then mine that material, cutting down the resource time for you to get the items that you want, or for you to build the frames that you want. So even though there was a lot of those things, there were still other ways that were like pretty consumer friendly to encourage people to keep playing the game. And so far, what I feel with the First Descendant, it 100% feels like let's make as much money as we can and then let's just dump the game in a year.
Also, one big note and omission that hasn't been included in a lot of this conversation is the fact that Warframe allows for trading, so you can get these things that cost premium currency in Warframe by trading with other players. No such thing exists in the First Descendant. People will often reference
why would you offer trading? That's a good solution. What we could do is we could allow people to pay to be part of an auction, which the First Descendant will obviously take a cut of, like, come on, and then people can trade that way only in an auction house that is being controlled by the First Descendant.
Fact that Nexon has promised they will eventually look at possibly adding trading in the future.
They will possibly
shouldn't exactly
look
be
at
completely putting our trust in Nexon for a reason we'll get to right here. In general, the game's monetization model revolves around having, like I said, really long grinds for stuff that you are likely to want, and then selling you the means of skipping that grind conveniently in the cash shop, with a low % chance for drop rate just being one example, one means of doing that. And that's also if you can even trust Nexon's stated drop rates. Hint, you can't, or you shouldn't put full confidence in it, because I'd like to remind you, if you were unaware as well, a mere 6 months ago, Nexon was fined $9 million by the Korean FTC. Why? Well, because after an investigation, it was revealed that Nexon was essentially scamming customers for over a decade. So it's been known for a while by people who play their games that Nexon has some of like the worst monetization, some of the most anti-consumer monetization practices in the industry. Nexon games have been known for that. It's not unheard of prior to this whole $9 million fine debacle. But this story was on a whole nother level. So the TLDR of the situation is this. Nexon sold in MapleStory what are essentially loot boxes that reward players these powerful stat boosts. So you would purchase and open these items called cubes, and when you opened it, you would get a random chance and rewarded multiple boosts in power for your character. Well, there was a particular combination of outcomes that most players wanted from these cubes. Basically, it was a really strong boost that pretty much benefited everybody. It's a lot of the reason reason is what fueled a lot of these cube purchases. People wanted this one particular outcome for a powerful stat boost for their character. It turns out, in their investigation, the Korean FTC learned that for a time over the course of a decade, that reward that people were essentially gambling on to get, that was never possible. The thing that many people wanted, that most powerful outcome of these cubes, could never be obtained. You could buy a billion cubes, and within this window of time, the probability of getting it was goose egg, actually 0. That is crazy, and that is exactly why.
It is wild, and that's probably why I will not be spending a single penny on the first Descendant. Oh shit, this video is already half an hour long, so I'm gonna end it here. Let me know what you think. Are you going to be getting the first Descendant? Are you gonna be putting money in it? I know I want. Let me know in the comment section down below. And while you're down there, don't forget that subscribe button, because we're on the road to 400. And if you don't want to help, well, remember, at the end of the day, I'm just some guy on the internet, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace. If you want to see more of my face, be sure to click the video you see on screen right now.